Design tells a story. Architecture is one of the oldest forms of storytelling. The buildings we occupy, the streets we walk on, the interiors we inhabit, and the monuments we engage with serve as the backdrop and make up the landscape of our lives. And so, whatever story it tells has a profound influence on our society. Architecture forges the elements of our culture. Paris tells one story, New York tells another, and Hanoi tells a completely different one, and so powerfully that even a simple glance at their streets tells you so much about their culture, history, lifestyle, and aspirations. Let's now focus on what has been one of the most prominent cultural sites on the planet for centuries, the Vatican, with Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel and St. Peter's Basilica. These places tell the story of a beautiful divinity, full of wonder, color, and precision. It's hard to put their grandeur into words, but Michelangelo manifested the entirety of the Old and New Testament into an eternal, singular masterpiece. Just think about it. This was built half a millennia ago, and yet it still presents to the world a space that seems unbelievable in its vastness and grandiose, but not in an intimidating, power-grabbing, oppressive sort of way. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's reaching out towards humanity in a way that teaches us, inspires us, and enlightens our spirituality. Its popularity, with what is often a shoulder-to-shoulder experience with people from all over the world, reflects this message. To this day, it strikes awe to those who make the pilgrimage. There is something truly special about this place. And so, what story does this tell us? A different one, that's for sure. But what is this place? Where is it? This isn't the villain's lair from Elden Ring. Believe it or not, this is also in the Vatican. The Pope's throne room, Paul VI's audience hall, built in 1971, with the sculpture behind the throne called The Resurrection by Italian artist Fazzini, completed in 1978. This room in the sculpture is also grand and intricate, but it's also terrifying and ominous. It's negative, dark, intimidating, and rather than filling its onlookers with virtue, wonder, and hope like St. Peter's Basilica and the Sistine Chapel, it fills people with fear and belittlement. If this and this tells the story of God and his loving relationship with man, then what is the story that this room is telling? Certainly one that is rather sinister and oppressive. I don't need to get into any theological narratives, but I'll leave it up to your imagination. But, some of you say, the statue is the resurrection of Jesus. This must be a story of hope. Well, you would think so, but in the artist's words, Christ rises from this crater, torn open by a nuclear bomb, an atrocious explosion, a vortex of violence and energy. Well, that seems rather damning, doesn't it? What a nice thought, that the Pope's throne room predicts a destructive nuclear war, and that Christ's resurrection that follows is a, quote, vortex of violence. This is the opposite of hope, the opposite of inspiration. It's anti-human and not beautiful. As a content creator, cybersecurity and data protection has become extremely important to me. Since my YouTube channel has grown, I've gotten a massive influx of scam calls and attempted sign-ins into my account, and it's genuinely worrying. I know one of the reasons I was getting so many spam texts and calls is because big companies can't keep our data safe. As I talked about last time, recently, AT&T revealed that nearly all of their customers' call and text records had been exposed in a massive data breach, and it hasn't even been a few months since they admitted over 70 million of their users' social security numbers ended up on the dark web. The stolen logs also contain a record for every number AT&T customers called or texted, so even if you don't use AT&T, if someone who texted you did, then your number has been exposed. So what can you do to protect yourself? You can use Aura, like I do, the sponsor of today's video. Aura will alert me if they find my phone number or any other sensitive information that has been compromised. And they give me fast fraud alerts if anyone tries to use that data to access my credit or bank accounts. Aura does so much to keep me and my family safe too. I also get things like transaction monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, parental controls, and identity theft insurance. I get all of this in one app at one affordable price. I can also get their AI-powered call assistant that will pick up unknown calls on my behalf to screen them for spam and scams. The AI forwards legitimate calls to me, so I don't miss appointments, deliveries, and emergencies. And it protects me from harmful text messages by filtering out known spam numbers and scanning links in the message for phishing threats. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/alexanderotmans and try your first 2 weeks for free, all linked below in the description. But these sorts of stories and messages plague modernism and so much of what has been built since the mid-20th century, sometimes in ways that are rather subtle, but oftentimes in ways that's quite blatant, and this has undoubtedly led to increased hostility and social and cultural rot. Looking at something completely different now, here's the infamous, new, and very costly fountain built in Vienna. But first, let's look at some of the classical fountains around Vienna. They are gorgeous, with the ornamentation and world-class artistry uplifting the streets and buildings that surround them. Fit for a museum, the sculptures depict scenes of history, mythology, and folklore that tell the long-told stories that have helped shape the culture and legacy of this incredible city and its people. They ground those who happen to pass by, depicting the long tradition and history in which they are now following in the footsteps of, in turn uplifting them and providing some level of purpose. Their beauty and extravagance sets a high standard while also giving the people of the city something to be proud of. Just think about it. If you grew up here and passed by and visited these places throughout your life, they would mold your own perception of the city, its culture, and its people, and, through the way they were built, will point you in a direction of high achievement, beauty, and truth, with regard to Vienna's long and respected history. Now just imagine that, but this is the fountain in question. Apparently, this commemorates the 150th anniversary of Vienna's water system, meaning this fountain is meant to honor history, triumph, and of course, the people who have benefited from such. And they did this through... are these testicles? But seriously, no words can describe how ridiculous this thing is. Talk about dehumanizing your populace. And here's the thing, I don't even blame the artists. Okay, never mind, that's a stretch. I do. But this is what they're learning to do. This is what the art and architecture schools are teaching them to create. Because the modernist ideology that pervades these educational institutions do not care about the messaging of virtue and heroism, tradition and history, and of course, the common people. They, in fact, are against all of that for varying reasons, and instead are purposely teaching their students to create places that are meant to shock, horrify, and dumb down. They want the messaging, the logos of these places they have the opportunity to build to contribute to the social decay that we've witnessed over the past decades. And why? Well, that's an entirely different discussion. But the fact is that when places like this are being built by the most prestigious, highly educated artists and designers, it speaks to the ideology that they believe in. And in the case of this fountain, it's clearly one that goes against humanity, because these figures are of a different realm, and not a good one. But this phenomenon works itself subtly as well. Look at the interior of the classical American office building, including some masterful Art Deco designs. Think about the people who get to work here every single day, and all the hours spent here. While work itself can be stressful, tedious, and often insufferable, at the very least these people can enjoy spending time in such a beautiful space. An environment that uplifts, aspires, and gives one a feeling that they are contributing to something important and good. And of course, a space that is enjoyable, welcoming, and simply a space that feels comfortable. These places subtly but effectively send the message of the payoff of hard work, and of the beauty of the society that they are contributing towards, and that they, the common employee, are granted such a beautiful space to conduct their labor, making them feel appreciated and important. Now compare that to the modernist office spaces that followed. These spaces tell the story of being a cog in a machine. That beauty is only meant to be enjoyed by those at the very top, that the effort into making a place enjoyable to be in isn't worth it for the common man. This is a story of oppression, dehumanization, and a soul-sucking backdrop to someone's daily life, and the constant view of either the ugly, modernist buildings surrounding or an ocean of parking is all the more imprisoning. The story that the design of these buildings is telling you is that your place of work doesn't care about you. Your industry doesn't think of you as a human being. Or, speaking of imprisonment, how about this modernist school in Los Angeles, Bernstein High School, built in 2008? This is where youth are meant to develop and learn about the world around them and their place in it. Classical school buildings were built with the understanding of how important a beautiful setting is for this process. Beauty inspires the pursuit of truth and the achieving of greatness. But a place like this, with its gray, metal square walls and narrow windows, seems to be prepping its students for a different type of institutional accommodation. But this subtle, but sometimes not so subtle, oppressive messaging has taken place everywhere. From lampposts, to sidewalks, to benches, trash cans, bridges, pavement, signage, you name it. And what story do they tell? That beauty doesn't matter, history doesn't matter, culture doesn't matter, morality doesn't matter, and most of all, that you don't matter. No wonder so many people are depressed, have such little faith in the places that they live in, little devotion to the community that surrounds them, and little hope for the future. Because rarely, whether it's our most prized institutions or our local street, is there anything that sends a message of hope, glory, achievement, and virtue. Architecture and design should aspire to uplift humanity, not suppress it. We can tell a better story. We have to. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.